Wisconsin's non-partisan Legislative Audit Bureau released a new report today on Governor Scott Walker's economic development program, and it's ugly. So the main takeaway from the report is that Governor Scott Walker is basically a socialist. Now, he's the worst kind of socialist because he only does socialism for corporations and the rich, but nonetheless, he is a socialist. And he absolutely adores big government when it's to help out his buddies. So if you don't believe me, here, I'll prove it to you. Think Progress reports, quote, after giving more than 100 grants, Walker's development agency failed to follow up on whether the companies they were subsidizing were actually using the funds to create jobs, as they promised. The group also gave loans and tax credits to companies that did not meet its requirements and did not even attempt to fact-check claims by the companies about the number of jobs they created. Additionally, the agency forgave, wrote off, or deferred more than $4 million in loan payments that the corporations were supposed to pay back to the state. So let's pause there. So he sets up this economic development program, this agency, and the idea is, well, we're going to look at good private businesses and we'll give them, a tax credit here or a subsidy there. And the idea is to create jobs here in Wisconsin, and that's going to help out everybody in Wisconsin. So that's the theory. What happened in practice is you had corporations making promises about job creation that they couldn't meet. You had the agency not even fact-checking to see whether or not the money that they're giving to these companies and these corporations is effective, to see whether or not it's actually creating jobs. And it was all around a gigantic clusterfuck where millions of dollars was lost, and there's not even an attempt to get the companies to repay the money. So a government program is set up to basically do socialism for corporations, and they just let them get away with whatever the hell they want to get away with. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the bailouts. Remember when the government rushed in and said, okay, no strings attached, no rules, no regulations attached. Here, we're going to bail out all these different Wall Street companies, and then you guys can go back to doing exactly what you were doing before, all the fucked up practices you were doing before. So the taxpayers get hosed and the companies get saved. In this case, it's the same thing. It just happens to be the taxpayers of Wisconsin, and they're subsidizing all of these giant corporations when the corporations aren't even upholding their end of the bargain and paying back loans, for example, and creating jobs. So it was an absolute disaster, but we're still not done yet here. They say, quote, in 2014, two corporations that received millions in taxpayer funds from the agency, Eaton and Plexus, outsourced jobs to Mexico and other foreign countries, and laid off hundreds of Wisconsin workers. Oh boy. So what we have here is Scott Walker pulling a Chris Christie. Chris Christie did this with Campbell's, the company Campbell's, the tomato soup people. He did it with that company and two or three other companies where he gave them, a giant corporate welfare check and said, okay, now you guys are promising to create X amount of jobs, right? And they go, oh yes, Governor Christie, we're going to create that many jobs. And then what do? They cut jobs. So they get a giant corporate welfare check and then they cut jobs. The whole purpose of giving the money was so that they could create jobs, but they take the money anyway and they cut jobs. The exact same thing happened in Wisconsin. You set up an agency, you set up a program to do corporate subsidies to help the economy, and then they end up taking the money and shipping jobs to Mexico. Why? Of course, so that they can keep the money for themselves. They can pad the bottom line. They can make profit. See, this is the problem when you have government and corporations in bed together. What happens is, since it's a for-profit structure, it's a for-profit system, the corporations are, they're just going to keep raiding the Treasury and taking taxpayer money and not delivering on their promises. Because to deliver on their promises would mean that they can't take all that money and use it for profit and take it in profit and put it in their own pockets and pay their shareholders. So of course they're going to do that because that's the nature of the beast. That's the nature of the system you set up. And of course under somebody like Scott Walker, you're not going to have a true development agency that actually makes corporations abide by rules and regulations and prove that they're creating jobs and doing the right thing. Since this guy's in bed with industry and in bed with businessmen and billionaires, he looks the other way as they do this. In fact, I'll go a step further. It's likely that Scott Walker knew that this was happening and he didn't care. Now, why wouldn't he care? Because, again, these people are his buddies. It's just like that now infamous video that where Scott Walker was caught speaking to a billionaire donor of his, and she says to him something along the lines of, well, what are we going to do about the unions now? And he said, well, the idea is that you do like divide and conquer. So you find a way to bust up the unions and then screw the workers. And it shows you where his allegiance lies. He doesn't care about workers. He doesn't care about the people. He doesn't care about actually creating a better state. No, all he cares about is his donors and doing their bidding. And the most important thing to take away from this is, even to conservatives and Republicans, I'm pleading with you, if you're an average Joe conservative or Republican in Wisconsin, understand, this guy is not on your side. He's not on your side. He doesn't even agree with your ideology because, like I just described to you, he is a socialist. He does believe in big government. But he believes in big government that helps his buddies, that helps the corporations, that helps the rich. That's why he set up this economic development agency. Isn't it funny how Republicans are always in favor of some sort of government program which does subsidies and tax breaks for the rich and corporations, but if you were to bring up to Scott Walker, well, why not do something like this for, I don't know, students or for poor people? He would laugh it out of the room. He'd say, not a chance. That's not what I do. I believe in small government. They only talk about small government when it comes to your average person. When it comes to the corporations, they set up gigantic government programs to funnel money to them and look the other way as they don't even deliver on their promises as they're getting free money. Now, in conclusion here, let me read you the last part of this report. They say, quote, the new report comes out as Governor Walker and the legislature struggle to come to an agreement on how to address the state's nearly $2 billion deficit. So again, not a conservative. What's he doing? He's blowing up the deficits as he's giving taxpayer money to corporations. That's socialism. It's socialism for the rich. They say, a problem greatly exacerbated by the corporate tax breaks. As he seeks to slash about $300 million from the University of Wisconsin system, Governor Walker has asked for $47 million more for the agency. Okay, now it's just he's rubbing it in our face now. He doesn't care about the deficit. He doesn't care. He's cutting education. He just cut education. He's cutting education because, quote, we can't afford it, but then he's like, anyway, now could I have $47 million to give to my corporate welfare program, which just gives free money to corporations? So he's giving corporations all the money they want. The Treasury's open to corporations, but he's slashing everything for the people, for poor people, for students, for anybody who actually needs the money. I said it once, I'll say it again. Even if you're a conservative or a Republican, if you look at this, there's no way you can take away from this that this guy's a deficit hawk and that he believes in small government and that he shares your values. Even according to your own standards, he's failed miserably. You cannot consider this guy for higher office. You cannot cast a vote for him for president. That would be crazy.